Welcome to Feminist Utopia. This week in our Feminist Utopia, we have more women involved in the presidential debates than men. And it was actual reality, so that's very exciting. We had all women moderators and 4 women candidates. So there were a total of 8 women versus 6 men. And I was impressed with the way this debate was run. I really felt like it was more succinct. There wasn't a lot of talking over. It stayed reasonably within the time frame. I think it was really well run.
I completely agree, as did Brian Williams at the end, who volunteered all 4 women, including Rachel Maddow, who was not pleased, to handle all the debates moving forward.
Oh, I listened to the Rachel Maddow show and she was saying how nervous she was about doing this. So I thought she always handles herself extremely well, but I think it's an over preparedness. And I bet it was really stressful.
And it was interesting, she had one of my favorite questions of the night when she asked Elizabeth Warren if there was room in the Democratic Party for someone like John Bel Edwards, the recently reelected governor of Louisiana, who is anti-choice, signed into law one of the most restrictive anti-choice laws in the nation. And I thought you and I disagree about how that answer went.
Well, I think that it was appropriate that she said that it wasn't up to her to decide who was in and out of the party.
Yeah. But I also think that when I'm a big fan of the big tent. There's room for a lot of ideas. I think when you deny the humanity of people by taking away their rights to their own bodies, is there really room for that in the tent?
Yeah, that's true.
And Elizabeth Warren didn't want to go there. She's moving to the center, as evidenced by her walk back on Medicare for All by saying this is a phased plan and it'll take at least 4 years before we move to the next part of the plan.
Yeah, I didn't really see that as a walk back though, because I don't think that she articulated that earlier. I don't think she ever expected she was going to give everybody everything all at once. I never got that from her.
I got that people were expecting that.
Mm.
And I think as everything she does, I bet she already has her Thanksgiving menu planned. And she has a plan for everything.
Yeah.
So
You know what I bet? I bet her Thanksgiving menu hasn't varied for the last 40, 50 years. I think that she's that kind of a streamlined of a person. But we digress.
we're tying it into our holiday challenge.
Right. Check out our Facebook page or our website, feministutopia.net. But let's take a step back and talk about who was there, who wasn't there. I'm not calling a winner, and I'm not calling well, I can call a loser, but I don't think it makes any sense to rank or name winners and losers because we're not at that point yet. There were 10 candidates on the stage. We have Joe Biden, Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer, and of course, Elizabeth Warren. There are still candidates that are running that weren't on this stage, and they include Julian Castro, who had been a participant in previous debates.
I missed him last night. I really missed him.
Yeah. There's also Michael Bennet, this Colorado Senator, Montana Governor Steve Bullock, Maryland Representative John Delaney. Marianne Williamson hasn't dropped out yet for some reason. Okay, moving on. Pennsylvania, former Representative Joe Seastack. And then there was former Governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, who entered the race. And Michael Bloomberg formally entered the race today.
Womp womp.
Yeah, so we had two dropped out, Beto O'Rourke and Democratic Ohio Representative Tim Ryan. So we lost two and we gained two.
I'm trying to think of something positive, and at least they're not both white men. Uh, I'm struggling here. Who on earth, in their right mind, thinks they're needed on that stage right now?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm gonna miss Tim Ryan. I enjoyed poking at him on Twitter.
Well, now you can poke,
Bloomberg.
yeah, or Tom Steyer.
Tom Steyer, I do enjoy poking at, but he's so earnest. As billionaires go, but I still want to tax the crap out of him, and I don't want him on the stage.
I agree. He particularly annoyed me last night because he was saying, no one else on this stage is going to do blah, blah, blah. I'm the only one that can do whatever. And I know he was lying. It's patently untrue.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, if no one else on the stage said it, it's because there's so many people on the stage they didn't have the opportunity, and he didn't ask them direct questions about it either.
Can't he just do what billionaires are supposed to do and buy himself an ambassadorship and serve overseas for a few years? Sorry, the look that Benita just gave me when I said that.
I mean, that's what Trump does. But I mean, he's supposedly one of the good ones. He's using his money for good and saving the environment.
He can keep doing that. He doesn't have to run for president to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
And for the record, almost every president has people buying ambassadorships. I specifically think of Pamela Harriman, who bought the ambassadorship to France through her fundraising for the Clinton administration. It's a time-honored tradition. Only it seems like the only criteria in the Trump administration is the number of zeros on the check.
Right. Elizabeth Warren did talk about that last night a little bit.
Yeah.
She said that she was going to make a pledge that she would not allow ambassadorships to be bought. And she called on other candidates to do the same. She said nobody else had followed her lead on that. But that's another one of those things where, like Steyer, I don't know if she's really asked and they've said no, or if she just brought it up for the first time last night. I have no idea.
That would be an interesting question to ask. And I think as long as we're talking about Elizabeth Warren versus Tom Steyer, the white billionaire, we should probably talk about electability. Everybody keeps talking about that. And
Nobody more than Biden.
yes,
Yeah, that was another thing that annoyed me.
that's his whole plan. I'm electable. Union guys like me. I knew JFK. I don't know. He hasn't said that yet, but it'll come up. I saw JFK on TV. Is that what he's gonna say next? I don't know. But he reminded us how old he was repeatedly.
Yes, he did.
And it was I can't believe that him and Sanders are in the same age group. Sanders seems so much more together and younger and present.
You know, he looked really good last night. Physically, I think he looked much better.
Yes.
And yeah, I thought he did pretty well. But when I saw who spoke the longest, I was surprised that it was Elizabeth Warren again. She spoke for over 13 minutes, and next was Buttigieg, and then Biden, and then Sanders. So we've got the, front runners speaking the most. And they were all, pretty close. But then Yang only spoke for like less than 7 minutes.
And he had some of the best stuff of the night too.
Yeah, he did. So I was at this watch party last night, and it was at the Studio Movie Grill, which you can eat and drink and watch movies. And it was a great venue because the debate was on the big stage and you could hear it. And there were maybe, I think, about 50, 60 people there. It was a small theater and it was pretty full. But the Yang Gang posed for a picture at the end of the debate, and I was looking and I stood and counted how many there were there. There were over 20. And this was after the end of the debate, and I know some people had left before. So, at least in Houston, I mean, the Yang Gang came out in force at that debate watch party.
I've talked to you earlier today about this, but I'll tell the listeners. I did a couple of pro Yang tweets, especially on the how would you What would your first phone call to Putin sound like? Well, I'm sorry your guy lost and you're not going to meddle in our elections anymore. Best line of the night.
Agreed.
And his comment that got buried about data being the next or even the current major issue, international issue regarding power and control and stuff, got completely buried. I posted positive tweets on both of those. And our Twitter account has blown up to the point where I had to turn off Twitter for notifications. And I wake up and there were over 200. And right now my phone's still blowing up. The Yang people are completely tied into this in a way that I haven't seen.
They rival Sanders supporters. And I didn't see any Sanders supporters.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
when
find.
I was at the watch party, I'm sure they were there, but I had my Elizabeth Warren t shirt on, and all the Yang people had, either math hats or pins or t shirts, and they brought with them business cards and note cards and everything with the website on them, and they had
Yeah.
signs, and they were incredibly engaged.
And they keep tweeting to me and sending me messages through the Feminist Utopia Twitter thing about, you should learn more about UBI. And I'm thinking on a personal level, if you knew my personal account, know I've been talking about UBI for literally years. And I know his position that they are evangelical in
Right.
their approach, and that kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah.
I understand political messaging, but some of them are coming on with that fervored, wide-eyed, I know the truth and I know the I know the way, and I'm just like, "Ah!"
Yeah, but we were talking about electability, and it really begs the question whether Yang is electable. And I think that his supporters are feeling pressure and panic and really feel they need to be evangelical. He has not yet qualified for the debate in December.
And it's not an issue of my understanding, it's not an issue of polling because he's already getting higher in the polls in Iowa. My understanding, and that could change by the time you hear this, it was an issue of individual donors.
Right. Wait, Andrew Yang has met the individual donor threshold.
The last time I got an ad on Facebook telling me he needed more donors to meet the December threshold. That's
The way it works in December is you have to have at least 4% in 4 polls approved by the party, or 6% in 2 early state polls like Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Nevada. That's the polling requirement. And you also have to have donations from at least 200,000 unique donors overall, and a minimum of 800 in at least 20 states. So you have to have a pretty broad base of support. And Andrew Yang is the only one of the candidates who's met the donor threshold. There's several others that haven't met it yet: Yang, Steyer, Gabbard, and Booker. So
I think Booker will pull that one out. He had a good night last
they're
night.
close. Tulsi Gabbard and Cory Booker are close, and Tom Steyer has met the polling threshold but is short the donor requirement.
Okay. We have to talk about Tulsi because I don't feel I can any longer take the pledge that anybody up on that stage I would vote for if they won the nomination after last night. Her consistent poor showing, and every time she opens her mouth, she says something I don't like. From the debate before saying, I want to put restrictions on late term abortions, to now, well, what do you mean? I'm going to compare myself to FDR. Of course, I sat down and talked with Assad, a man who used chemical weapons. FDR sat down and spoke with Stalin. FDR was the president of the country, and even Stalin didn't use chemical weapons on his own people. Shut the hell up. She had a horrible showing. She spoke poorly, she seemed nervous, and she didn't have a plan for anything.
To me, her foreign policy is all that she cares about. And I don't see her having any plans for anything else, really.
And veterans. It's veterans, and we shouldn't go to wars, and nothing else. She gets nothing else. And when she did open her mouth of reproductive rights, it was terrible. It was anti-feminist.
Yeah, I think we can agree that neither one of us would shed any tears if Tulsi didn't make the debate stage in December.
Joe Biden will be there. I hope it's at an earlier time and it's before sundowning kicks in. What the hell was going on with him last night?
I don't know. You know, he really made that faux pas when he said that about, oh, what was it that he said about the only black,
Female senator.
yeah, only African American woman that had ever been elected to the United States? He was backed by her. And it was rather entertaining to see Kamala like going, what the hell? I'm right here, dude. And then he tried to cover it up. He's by saying, I said the first one. Yeah, no, when you wind with the tape back, he really didn't.
He really didn't, and it was interesting because he started out okay. When they asked him the first question, he did fine, and then he had a great moment when talking about American relations with Saudi Arabia and how we needed to be tougher with them and hold them accountable for their actions in the Khashoggi murder and all these things. And then he talks about, I passed this domestic violence act and we need to keep punching away at it and men need to keep punching away at fixing this. I was just, dude.
We were all
Ah,
stunned. Well, it was after they talked about, is America ready for a woman president? Or, and he says, he said something other idiotic thing about how a man should never hit a woman except in self-defense. And that's really rare. I mean, he just was a deer in the headlights, and it went downhill from there when he's talking about punching in relating to domestic violence.
I don't think Biden is electable in the internet age. He was electable 30 years ago when he has always made these Biden mistakes where he would misspeak and say things, but the internet wasn't there to catch them all.
The only thing he's relying on is his white maleness.
And Obama.
Oh, yeah, he's always got to bring in Obama and his connection with him.
So this goes back to the electability issue. And I had a listener send me a podcast from the New York Times about electability, and I listened to the whole thing. And what really feel a lot of people are missing, especially pollsters, is that when Democrats run moderates, they lose. Joe Biden, Al Gore, John Kerry. Well, John Kerry and Al Gore lost. They were the moderate white male that the Democrats were told they needed to win, and it didn't work. John Kerry couldn't carry Ohio. I don't believe that we need a white, moderate male to win this presidency. What we need are actions, plans, and movement forward. And that was why Obama won. Obama is politically a moderate. And he came out and said, "Oh, no, Obama said, don't move too far to the left." Obama completely and consistently ignores the fact that he is a radical due to his skin color.
Right.
That made him radical. He could sit there and talk about, incremental change and all that.
NPR did a poll recently, and we'll link in the show notes, but they asked a battery of questions about candidate qualities, and being a woman is one of the most desirable qualities in a candidate among all registered voters, Republicans and Democrats. Democrats said they would be most enthusiastic about voting for a woman. Of national registered voters, 71% said they would vote for a woman or be enthusiastic about voting for a woman. Democrats and Democrat leaning independents were 83% likely. Republicans were 59% likely to be excited about voting for a woman. And independents were 71%. And over all registered voters, 71% say they would enthusiastically vote for a woman. So we need to just put that to bed. We are ready for a woman president. We are ready.
Yes, I
And it's
completely agree.
the media that keeps saying, oh, only Biden can win, and oh, we're not ready for a woman, or are asking the question, are we ready? That's not the right question to ask. That's not the way to frame it. We need to get the established media saying, we are ready. And here's the polling.
And here's the polling. They ignore their own polling on this. And in the after show, Brian Williams basically said he gave his panelists this really bizarre question about, so is this too far left? Are the people up there too far left, or do we need to, pull the moderates, away from going left? Basically, he was worrying after watching this whole thing that everybody was going too far left. No moderates were really going to get elected in the primary. And what did that mean? And it was clear that his bias was impacting the questions he was saying. The act of asking the question, are we ready for a female president? Are we ready to have a woman in the White House? Is in and of itself misogyny.
Agreed, 100%. And we need to start talking like we are ready, because we really are.
Yes.
It seems like in the African American community, the voters are so focused on getting rid of Trump that they may be afraid to commit to a candidate that has some hint of unelectability around them. Like they're not coming out in support of women because they really need to get rid of Trump. So they're still supporting Biden. And I'm hoping that that changes.
This was true in 2007 with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton at this stage was outpolling Barack Obama among Black voters, even in South Carolina at this stage of the primary process. And in large part, it was because Black communities, especially Black leaders, were saying, we have to get someone elected, and the Clintons are like us. They know our problems. We're not ready for a Black president.
Mm-hmm.
And it took Obama plugging away at it. And it goes to show that this is a process. We don't know who's going to be the nominee now. It's too early to worry about the general. You fall in love in the primary and you fall in line for the general. That's how this process works.
I 100% agree. And, I have to say that I was encouraged watching the debate last night because I really felt like I could fall in line with just about anybody on that stage, with the exception of Tom Steyer and Tulsi Gabbard.
I could fall in line for Tom. I would vote. That's what I would do. I would vote.
But in that sense, I mean, I really think Kamala Harris killed it last night. I enjoyed her. She
Mhm.
looked presidential.
She
She
did.
was on her toes, and I think she could go head to head with Trump, no problem. And the other one that I was impressed by, Amy Klobuchar.
Yes.
She's not somebody I get excited about normally, but man, she had her point. She hammered on her experience and her ability to work across the aisle. She had her talking points and she stuck with them every question. So she gained a little bit of respect from me for her performance.
I especially liked how she handled that question that had come up in an interview where Amy Klobuchar basically said that women are held to a higher standard, and no woman would be on that stage if they had the qualifications of Mayor Pete. And they tried to put her on the spot with that, and I thought she handled it beautifully.
Yes, she did.
She said that he was qualified, but women are held to a higher standard. Otherwise, we could play a game called Name Your Favorite Woman President.
Right.
That was a mic drop moment.
It really was. She brought some humor and she didn't compromise her principles and she made her point. And yeah, I thought that she did well. But she had that weird shaky thing going on.
I thought that was just me, and then I saw people talking on Twitter about it, and then we were texting back and forth about it, and it would just periodically come up. There were moments, and I think it's her prepared moments that she starts doing that. When she's just debating and
Not thinking about it so hard.
she
Yeah.
just rolls with it, and she's so much better.
But she, I think, also has the qualifications. I would vote for her without reservation.
I would vote for her, and I would actively campaign for her. Just not my first choice, but I'd go out there and block walk for her.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we mentioned a long time ago about this indivisible. It's not a poll, it's a commitment that the nonprofit organization Indivisible has a pledge asking all of the candidates to support whoever wins the nomination for the Democratic presidential. And every candidate that was on that stage has signed on to that pledge except for two. And one was, surprise, surprise, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, she's setting up for her independent run. I'm sorry. She really is.
And the other one that hasn't signed it is Andrew Yang.
Really?
And I don't know if he has made the conscious decision not to sign it or what is behind that. Maybe we'll hear from some of the Yang gang that are listening. They can take him to task because really, if we're going to beat Donald Trump, we have to fall in line and work for whomever is the presidential nominee.
Yeah, I'd go third party. Yeah, if Tulsi Gabbard runs, it'll be as a third party spoiler candidate. And my hope is that she pulls the never Trumpers who feel they can't vote for a Democrat, so at least they won't vote for a Republican.
Oh, I think I follow you, but it's complicated.
I think Tulsi would pull Republican light voters before she would pull Democrats, given so many of her positions.
In any case, we are going to have to work hard to get out the vote.
And that they brought that up too last night. And I'll briefly touch on this. We're starting to run out of time. But basically, they talked about voter suppression, and I think we don't talk about that enough. We talk about trying to reach, and Mayor Pete, I'm just going to call him that, said, we need to reach these newly former Republicans. No, we need to reach the people that don't go out because they think it doesn't matter. We need to reach the people that their votes have been suppressed because Alabama closed down every DMV in their county. We need to reach those people. And they talked about that. Booker had great talking points about it. It was incredible. And
Elizabeth Warren has a plan for that.
Of course she does. Of course she does. I want her to come up with a plan for my stocking stuffers for Christmas.
Socks.
Socks. Fun socks. So, but basically, it's the thing I think we also need to focus on, and we'll probably be doing an episode about that at the beginning of the year about voter suppression and what we can do and how we can fight it. It's worse than gerrymandering.
Agreed. So, thank you so much for listening. Our call to action this week is
take a look at the indivisible pledge and see about making sure your candidate is on board with that.
Also, you can get on board with that too. They're asking individual voters to take that pledge. And I have taken that pledge. Tulsi Gabbard isn't going to make it. I promise.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Have a good week.
Thank you so much for joining us today at Feminist Utopia. If you like our work, please give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you access our podcasts so others can find it as well. You may also become a Feminist Utopia patron at patreon.com to show your appreciation. Remember, patrons get perks.
And check out our blog and other resources at our website, feministutopia.net. Email us your idea of what a feminist utopia would look like or any questions to info@feministutopia.net. We appreciate you taking the time to listen and grow with us. Feminist Utopia is created by Debbie Williams and Benita Malone.